Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We're diving deep into the engineering psyche of Formula One today, really looking through the lens of Adrian Newey. I mean, arguably the greatest technical mind the sport's ever seen, right?
Absolutely. And we've got some incredibly candid remarks from him recently.
Yeah, and they reveal something, well, maybe a bit surprising. F1's success, it seems, isn't just about, physics and throwing millions of dollars at a problem anymore. It's almost management theory.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to sift through Newey's observations, not just about designing the car, which is his bread and butter, but about the health of the organization itself.
Right, because he walked into a very high-profile team, Aston Martin, and apparently saw some immediate red flags, a kind of cultural déjà vu, he called it.
Exactly. And that suggests that even with, let's be honest, seemingly unlimited funding from Lawrence Stroll and immense talent behind the wheel like Fernando Alonso, well, that might not be enough.
If there's this sort of internal, non-technical rot, as you put it,
Yeah, something fundamentally flawed inside the way the team thinks.
that's the hook, isn't it? The thread we need to pull on. He's seeing ghosts from his past, basically.
He is. He identified a major cultural issue that he believes is potentially fatal to their championship dreams. And it's got nothing to do with the aerodynamics or the floor of the car, initially at least.
So what is it then? What's this fatal flaw?
Well, what's fascinating is how these intangible things, right? The team's beliefs, the culture, how they interact, how that directly impacts really complex million-dollar technical choices.
Okay.
Newey pointed to a kind of organizational inertia at Aston Martin. He described it as self-satisfaction. But the really toxic part, the bit that probably made him think, uh-oh, was what he termed a pervasive culture of blame.
A culture of blame. Let's just dig into that for a second. Why is that specifically so destructive in F1? This super high-velocity, high-stakes engineering world. It sounds almost minor, but the impact must be huge.
Oh, it's massive. It's basically the complete opposite of innovation. In Formula One, you live and die by taking risks, by pushing aggressive concepts.
Right, you have to find the edge.
Exactly. So imagine you're an engineer. You've got a potentially revolutionary idea, but it's risky. If you're worried that if it fails, and lots of ideas do fail in F1, you'll be singled out, blamed, maybe even lose your job. Well, what are you going to do?
You're going to choose the safe option, the conservative design path, every single time.
Precisely. You minimize your personal career risk, sure, but in doing that, you pretty much guarantee the car is going to be, well, average, mediocre.
So psychological safety, that management buzzword, it's actually a technical requirement in F1. If engineers hide those risky ideas, the ones that could be game changers.
You never find those vital tenths of a second. It's as simple as that. And Newey apparently recognized this pattern almost instantly at Aston.
And that's the déjà vu part.
That's the déjà vu. He said the atmosphere, the feeling, it strongly reminded him of another team, one that used to wear green before it eventually turned blue.
Jaguar.
Back in
2004.
Yep. Right before it morphed into the Red Bull powerhouse we know today. He walked into Jaguar back then and apparently found the exact same sort of defeatist attitude. People not truly believing they could win.
Wow. That historical context is so important here because Newey isn't just an engineer, he's a technical leader. And he clearly believes he can shift this culture just like he did when Jaguar became Red Bull.
He does. But culture change is never easy, is it? It's often painful.
And our sources do suggest that these comments, his blunt assessment, caused some friction internally at Aston Martin. There are reports that at least one key figure, Dan Fallows, wasn't exactly thrilled.
Well, you can imagine. It's a tough message to hear. But that's really the core of Newey's philosophy, isn't it? When the architect of multiple championship-winning cars tells you your problem isn't the hardware, it's your attitude.
You kind of have to listen. You either accept the short-term pain of changing how you work, or you basically sign up for the long-term pain of probably not winning.
That's the choice. Okay, so moving on a bit, let's just clarify who Newey is, fundamentally.
Yeah, good point, because he gets talked about like some kind of, I don't know, F1 wizard.
Well, he kind of is. But he's an engineer first and foremost.
Yeah.
A technical guy. Someone who cut his teeth working trackside, actually getting his hands dirty.
Yeah.
He even balanced F1 and IndyCar simultaneously way back when.
Right. He's not just a manager sitting in an office or some F1 politician playing games.
Not at all. And that's key to understanding how he operates. He knows what you absolutely need for success. You need the raw talent, obviously. You need effective technical leadership, which, let's face it, he provides. And you need money.
Which brings us to Lawrence Stroll.
Exactly. Stroll clearly brings the financial firepower to Aston Martin. And Newey himself noted that if someone guides Stroll correctly, points him in the right direction, well, Stroll opens the wallet.
And you can see that, can't you? That incredible new factory complex they've built. It's proof of serious commitment.
Absolutely state-of-the-art. But, and this is crucial, the best factory and all the money in the world only gets you to the starting grid.
So where does the actual winning advantage come from, the technical edge?
It almost always starts with how you interpret the rulebook, exploiting it. Newey is, well, people call him a god at finding those gray zones in the regulations, the loopholes.
Success in modern F1 isn't just about raw speed anymore, is it? It's about being clever, almost like a lawyer finding a loophole in a contract.
That's a great analogy. It's creative interpretation of incredibly complex technical and legal documents. And that's where this rule of decimals comes in. Tiny gains matter hugely.
Like the double diffuser, Jensen Button, Braun GP.
The perfect example. That wasn't just a small improvement. It was a conceptual revolution based on reading the rules differently than, well, certainly differently than the FIA intended.
And that single interpretation, that loophole, delivered those crucial, game-changing tenths of a second per lap that nobody else had initially.
And that's the difference between finishing second or maybe third and winning a world championship. It's that stark.
Which leads us to a pretty painful truth about modern F1, something we hear time and again from engineers.
Yeah, the preseason testing reality. Basically, in today's F1, you have a very, very good idea if you need to effectively retire from that year, as some put it, right after the first proper tests. Barcelona, Bahrain, wherever they are.
So if your fundamental car concept, the thing you launch with, doesn't work straight out of the box, you're probably done for the season.
Largely, yes. The performance gap is usually just too big to make up through in-season development, no matter how hard you work or how much money you spend. That initial concept is absolutely everything.
That focus is incredible. Knowing so early if you're really in the fight or just making up the numbers, it requires ruthless efficiency. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, welcome to DRS Zone. And don't forget to subscribe for more F1 content, including charts and graphics that can illustrate that performance curve we just talked about. Now, back to how Newey actually works to find those margins.
Right, let's talk methodology, because this is where his approach really diverges from, say, a standard corporate structure.
And it's not like he gets it right every single time either. We should acknowledge that.
Oh, absolutely not. We all remember the McLaren MP418 back in 2004, right? Hugely innovative, visually extreme.
Looked amazing.
Looked incredible. But it never actually raced. It was just too aggressive, too unreliable, pushed the boundaries too far, even for Newey.
Which also kind of underlines that point some people are making now. The speculation that the next generation of F1, the 2026 rules, might be more engine-dominated than aero-dominated.
That's a valid debate. It could shift the balance slightly away from pure aerodynamic genius like Newey's traditional strength.
But his real genius now might be less about pure aero and more about synthesis, pulling it all together.
I think that's exactly right. His adaptability is key. And his success, especially in the modern F1 era where teams are so big and specialized, it comes down to how he manages the flow of information. We could call it his 10-50 rule.
Okay, the 10-15 rule. Break that down.
So he insists that only about 10% of his time at the factory is spent in formal meetings. He keeps them to an absolute minimum.
Just 10%. Most engineers listening are probably dreaming of that.
Right. He ensures they only happen if there's something concrete and actionable to discuss. No meetings for the sake of meetings.
Okay, so that's the 10%. What about the other 50%? Because that's where the magic seems to happen.
Well, 50% of his remaining time, so a big chunk of his week, is spent just walking the factory floor, casually checking in, poking around in different departments. The Spanish term picando captures it well, talking to people, seeing how the different pieces are fitting together, or maybe not fitting together.
So it's informal auditing, connecting the dots between departments.
That's his superpower, I think. Modern F1 teams can easily become fragmented, right? Siloed. The aero guys optimize their wing, but maybe they don't fully grasp how it messes with the cooling for the guys in the powertrain department.
And Newey acts as the central hub, the synthesizer.
Exactly. He ensures the entire car is understood and developed as one single, incredibly complex, interconnected system, not just a collection of optimized parts bolted together.
That sounds brilliant in theory. But let me push back a bit here. Does the 10-50 rule only work because he's Adrian Newey? I mean, if some junior engineer tried to skip 90% of their meetings to just walk around and chat, they'd probably be shown the door, wouldn't they?
Probably. That's a fair point.
Is it a sustainable system, or is it just, a dictatorship of geniuses? Can it only work with him?
Look, it's definitely tailored to his unique ability to see the whole picture. But the underlying philosophy, prioritizing that informal cross-functional communication over rigid formal reporting that's universally valuable, I think, and he builds a structure to support it.
How so?
He talks about how the car's development is essentially divided into 4 main groups: front end, the central monocoque area, the powertrain integration, and the rear end.
Okay, logical chunks.
Yeah, and each group has maybe 15 or so dedicated people, plus a group leader who's responsible for that specific area.
So there are meetings then?
Oh yes, weekly meetings are mandatory. But, and this is the crucial Newey twist, they are only held if a genuinely new, actionable idea or development has come out of the previous week's work for that group.
So if there's nothing new to report or decide on, no meeting.
No meeting. If a meeting happens and it concludes without identifying a novel, actionable path forward, something to actually do, Newey literally considers it a waste of time.
Wow, that's ruthless efficiency. A ruthless commitment to actual progress, not just process.
That's the discipline, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's what allows them to constantly chase those tiny fractions of a second. Which brings us neatly into another big theme from Newey, this debate about data versus the physical sensor, the driver.
Ah, yes, the data trap.
Yeah.
He argues modern F1 has become too data-driven, right?
He does. His point is that sensors, telemetry, all that data, it's great at telling you what is failing. A seal broke, temperature spiked, pressure's dropped.
But not why.
Exactly. The sensors are often poor at explaining the deep, underlying why behind a failure, or even just explaining the subtle behaviors of the car. Why did it really understeer in that specific corner phase?
And this is where the driver comes in, the ultimate sensor.
That's his argument. The driver is the crucial physical sensor. Think about Max Verstappen, for instance. In milliseconds, he's synthesizing hundreds of inputs, vibrations, sounds, G-forces, steering feel, tiny slips things that data logging systems might capture bits of, but struggle to correlate into a coherent feeling.
And the suggestion is that Red Bull, perhaps more recently, are leaning even more heavily into listening to that specific granular feedback from Verstappen, valuing it maybe more than just the raw data sometimes.
That seems to be the implication. But, it's a massive but.
There's always a catch.
There's the feedback challenge. This whole approach only works if the driver is actually a good reporter, an exceptional communicator.
Right. Because we know, don't we, some really quick drivers are terrible at explaining why they're quick or what the car is doing, and vice versa. Some maybe slightly slower drivers are brilliant development drivers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The source material we looked at makes this crystal clear. Bad feedback or vague feedback from a driver can actually be worse than no feedback. It can send the entire engineering team down completely the wrong development path, wasting time and money.
So you need the speed, but you also need the articulation, the ability to translate those feelings into actionable engineering insights.
Precisely. And historically, F1 has had great examples of drivers who were phenomenal technical reporters.
Who are we thinking of? Schumacher? Senna?
Definitely, Schumacher and Senna are often cited. They were praised specifically for giving incredibly precise, actionable feedback. There was even mention of Nick Heidfeld. Apparently, he could sometimes detect something as small as a loose screw inside the engine just by the feel and sound.
Incredible. So it wasn't just the car understeers. It was...
It was. The car understeers on corner entry, specifically when I trail brake past the apex and it feels like the front left isn't biting initially. That level of detail.
That turns a fast driver into an invaluable technical partner, doesn't it? Not just a jockey.
That's the real secret weapon, potentially.
Yeah.
The ultimate variable.
So let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for you listening? We've dived pretty deep here.
I think the biggest takeaway is that the difference between success and failure in F1 today, it isn't just about having the most money or the fanciest wind tunnel, although those certainly help. Aston Martin has those.
Right. It's also deeply about the culture. Does the team truly believe it can win? Is it free from that crippling blame culture? And it's about methodology. How does the team communicate? Does it prioritize human insight and synthesis alongside the data?
Newey's job, especially in a situation like Aston Martin, seems to be less about designing every single nut and bolt himself these days, and more about designing an effective system of people, a winning system, a believing system.
That's well put.
And there's a whole discussion, particularly about the pilot being the ultimate sensor. It raises a really critical question for the future, I think. Something for you to mull over.
Go on.
In the next generation of F1, with simulations getting ever more precise AI potentially playing a bigger role, data streams becoming even more overwhelming.
Well,
Will the primary job description for an elite F1 driver start to shift? Will it be less of just being the absolute fastest over one lap and more about being the most effective technical reporter?
the driver as the irreplaceable human variable in this increasingly optimized, almost digital machine.
Exactly. Could that become the ultimate differentiator?
Wow. That is definitely something potent to think about until our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us today as we explored the engineering mindset in Formula One.
Been a pleasure.
Don't forget to subscribe and follow DRS Zone wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube for more deep dives into the technical and strategic world of F1. We'll see you next time.